Good morning, everyone. Like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting, the first in 2024 on January 9th at 9:30. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Dinéza, Assiniboine, Winniwak, Assiniboine Niha, Nihiwak, Anishinaabe, Secampa, Stony Dakota, the Mountain Métis, and the Métis. The municipality of Jasper acknowledges the land to honor the relationship that Indigenous people have with this land, to remind us of our responsibility and obligations to this place and to the Indigenous people, as well as to confirm our accountability to address the ongoing impacts of colonization that continue to affect Indigenous people. Councillors, you have today's agenda in front of you. Are there any additions to the agenda? Councillor Hall.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I would like to add an in-camera if we can at the end of the meeting regarding our intergovernmental meeting coming up next week.
Thank you for that. Mr. Gibbon.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Administration would like to request council allow an additional item to be added to the agenda. It's a presentation from administration on the local immigration partnership and the National Secretariat. The information was circulated to council yesterday. We have a presentation that we would show on screen, and then the documentation we'd add to minutes.
You suggesting that would be item 7.4, new business? Or would move on this forward?
Sure. No, we can. If it's okay with council, we do have enough of our staff here to make that presentation. That would be ideal if it was 7.1.
Sure. Yeah,
the start of those.
Okay, we'll move it to 7.1. And sorry, could you suggest the title of that?
Yeah. Yes, presentation on the local immigration partnership and the National Secretariat.
And then just go back, we do 10.2, the intergovernmental in camera. I have a motion from councillors to approve to amend the additions to the agenda. Councillor Callaramby, thank you. All in favor? Or not opposed? Motion carries. And then I have a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Hall. All in favor? Carries. Okay, moving on to that was item 3. Moving on to item 4, December 12th, 2023 committee of the whole minutes. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, and they're just on there for information. Moving on to item 5, delegations. There are no delegations. There's no correspondence, item 6. So moving right into 7.1, we have Mr. Olaf here for a presentation for the local immigration partnership.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor Wilson and Council. I'll introduce the item, and I'll introduce Mr. Olthoff in a quick second here. So the item before you is titled National Immigration Project, Local Immigration Project, and Settlement Services Renewal Support. And the recommendation is that committee receive the presentation for information, and that committee recommend council approve submitting an application to continue the partnership with Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, to deliver existing and expanded national, regional, and local services for another 5-year term. Alternatives, of course, committee could receive the presentation for information only, which would mean we would not apply for the next 5-year term. And of course, committee could make other recommendations as they develop. So in the background, you'll see that since 2017, Jasper has benefited from leading a vibrant and active local immigration partnership, which has also led to stable funding for 2 settlement services outreach workers in our community. And the Jasper Local Immigration Partnership, or JLIP, or often called LIP, is part of a Canada-wide program to support newcomers in local communities. JLIP is funded by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC. Our goal is to make Jasper a welcoming place for all newcomers. We work for systemic and cultural change to help newcomers thrive. Members of the JLIP include people from community organizations and agencies, businesses, individuals, government, and more. At Jasper Settlement Services, we help immigrants learn all about Jasper. The service is free and available in multiple languages. We can access translation and interpretation services. We can help access computers and the internet. Some of the program results from LIP and settlement over the last contract period have been, and I should note, this is quite an abbreviated list. You can probably all remember some of the things that these two sections of our programming have delivered. So settlement and newcomer network programming, promoting conversation circles and language sharing. Settlement workers in school, or SWIS program, delivery in our schools. Regular and special newcomer events such as community culture nights, the 2022 newcomer survey, supports specifically for Ukrainians recently, including a website page and information booths. One-to-one support for many newcomers in our community, and that is definitely the bulk of settlement services work, where they are keeping our settlement services team very busy. Back in 2020, Council passed the following motion, which enabled the Jasper Local Immigration Partnership as well as the National Immigration Project. The motion by Councillor McGrath be a resolve that Council direct administration to sign a negotiated grant agreement. And I won't read the rest of those details, but it was carried unanimously. And so therefore we did apply, we did sign that grant or that contract, and we have for the last basically 4 years. The contract period will end in 2025, early in 2025. We have benefited from hosting the National Immigration, we benefited from all of those programs. And we've also benefited from hosting the National Immigration Project Manager position within our Community Development Department. And this partnership has resulted in more access to local immigration partnership opportunities in programs and training for our staff, mentorship and coaching from the National Immigration Projects Manager to our settlement and LIP teams, increased influence at the national level for our very small and unique needs and perspectives, full access to the Community Data Project, enhanced relationship with a major external funder, IRCC, access to best practices that streamline and enhance our local work, and funding to cover administration and supervision of the program. So in the discussion here, with the 3 streams of IRCC's contracts with the municipality, which are specifically the JLIP, settlement, and the National Immigration Program Projects Manager, and they are all coming up for renewal. The period right now, we are, I could mention right now, Community Development Manager Lisa Riddell sends her regrets. She's busy working on preparing these applications right now. And so this will be a major function of our work for the next month to get these applications in. And in these contracts, should the municipality wish to continue providing these services, we will need a letter of support for each application. For the LIP and settlement services, IRCC has requested that we take a broader approach, and therefore there's an opportunity not only to continue the excellent work started in the first contract period, but also support service delivery in Hinton following a regional model similar to the Family Resource Network spoke and hub model, where Jasper is both a spoke and the regional hub coordinating the other spokes throughout the region. I should mention we did a pilot project in Hinton last year, which was very successful, where our team did travel to Hinton. We received extra funding for that pilot project, and our team delivered services in the community of Hinton. What we're looking at with our application this time is we would not send our staff to Hinton. We would have a partner in Hinton deliver those services. If successful, this would result in Jasper partnering with providers in Hinton to support supervised service delivery in that community. Due to the unique nature of the National Immigration Project stream, National Immigration Projects Manager Doug Olton, for those of you that don't know Doug, he works with the community development team on the national project work. And Doug is now going to present and speak to the attached summary of specifically his programming, but it will touch on all of the 3 streams. So Doug, I'll hand it off.
Thank you very much. I'll just take that one. Perfect. Thank you very much, Christopher, and thank you to Mayor and Council for this opportunity to speak with you today and for finding space within your agenda.
I just want to make sure that I am sharing this screen here, and I don't see it up. Yes, okay, fantastic. So what I would hope to do today is just to provide some background as to what the National LIP Secretariat is, how Jasper came to be involved in it, what we've achieved so far, and what we'd like to do going forward. So if you'll bear with me, I'll just give a little bit of background as to what a local immigration partnership is in concept. A local immigration partnership is a collaboration at the community level that works towards developing more welcoming and inclusive communities. It's a program funded by the federal government, by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, but that funding is provided either to a municipality or to a nonprofit organization in a community, and it allows for the development of a community-based, whole community approach to newcomer settlement. So the concept is that while the federal government provides the backbone support for the program, the specific approach the community takes to including newcomers and welcoming newcomers into the community is based in the community itself, and therefore responsive to the specific needs and conditions of that community. It's arm's length from the federal government. The program was started in 2008 in Ontario. It has since expanded considerably and continues to expand. So it now covers 89 communities across the country, including Jasper. And the Jasper Local Immigration Partnership was established in 2017. And incidentally, that's when I joined the team here as the coordinator of that project. So turning now to the National LIP Secretariat, and I apologize for the number of acronyms involved here. Here we have an acronym within an acronym. It is the National Local Immigration Partnership Secretariat. This is a project that began in 2018, and it began with a meeting that was held in Calgary of all local immigration partnership coordinators from across the country. And during that meeting, a conversation developed around the need for sustained collaboration and information sharing between all of these 80-some projects across the country. And through the course of that conversation, it occurred to those in attendance that we would benefit not only from greater connection with one another, but with some level of institutional support for that. And following that meeting, a working group was developed over the following year. That working group consulted with IRCC, with local immigration partnerships across the country, and eventually put together a proposal to fund a national secretariat, again, to facilitate collaboration and information sharing between local immigration partnerships. That working group approached Jasper and asked if we would be willing to co-lead that project. So eventually we took the decision, or we made the proposal to council, in fact, that we would like to be involved in that project. And with that motion being carried, we put forward a proposal to IRCC for some additional funding to support our involvement as a partner with a local immigration partnership in Toronto, this Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership. So as a result of that, we established the National LIP Secretariat as a two-LIP partnership. And we've developed, through consultation with the local immigration partnerships, a mandate to improve the efficacy of LIPs through sustainable networks, shared resources, capacity building, and the amplification of diverse LIP voices. What that means in practice is that we have a function of bringing LIPs together and coordinating collaboration between them, of facilitating sharing of resources between them. So, for example, all LIPs develop terms of reference. It's not necessary for every single one of them to develop them from nothing. So we facilitate the sharing of those types of documents, terms of reference, community plans, strategic and action plans, to allow for more efficient operation at the local level. We also develop tools and templates to facilitate their work. We organize professional development for LIP coordinators, including those here in Jasper. And we represent LIPs collectively at a number of national decision-making tables, including with IRCC. We have regular meetings with the IRCC policy branch. And we are guided by an executive committee made up of 12 local immigration partnerships from across the country. And that membership rotates on a 2-year term basis. So every year, half of our executive committee members are replaced and 6 new come on board. So some more concrete examples of what the National LIP Secretariat does. We operate an online repository of information and resources for local immigration partnerships at our website, thelipsecretariat.ca. We do, as I said, professional development, develop tools and templates for LIPs to use. We maintain partnerships with a couple of important data programs. Christopher mentioned the community data program. This is an important project that brings together statistical data from tax filer data, from the census, from administrative data from IRCC itself, and we make that available to all the local immigration partnerships at the level of their specific geography. So whether it's a community, a region, a part of a city, they can access that data specific to their region to help inform the decisions they make about how they want to support newcomers in their community. As I mentioned, we represent LIPS at national decision-making tables. We convene working groups on specific issues, including workplace inclusion, conducting research, anti-racism and anti-discrimination work. We're planning to expand that to include a network of rural local immigration partnerships, so specific supports for local immigration partnerships in small communities, as well as a working group around engagement with Indigenous communities. We facilitate peer-to-peer connections, and we inform, as I mentioned, IRCC policymaking through our regular meetings with policymakers. Has the project been a success? So I would like to suggest to you that it has been quite a big success. This project has gone very well and has received a great deal of support, both from the funder and from local immigration partnerships across the country. One of the indicators of that is that since we started the project in 2020, IRCC has seen fit to increase our budget annually to the tune of 400% over the last 4 years. A recent survey of local immigration partnerships found that 89% of respondents found that the NLS had been valuable to their work over the past year. We've seen an increasing role for the NLS and for local immigration partnerships in the national settlement and integration conversations. So when policymakers and decision makers at the national level talk about how they're going to support newcomer settlement across the country, local immigration partnerships are now a core part of that conversation. There is explicit reference to the National LIP Secretariat project in this recent call for proposals. So if you read the guidelines for the proposal, applicants are directed to our website to get reliable information about what local immigration partnerships are and what they should be doing. And there is actually a new funding stream that explicitly mentions our program as a potential recipient of funding. We've also received unanimous support for Jasper's continued participation in the leadership role of the NLS from our executive committee. So I think those are at least some strong indications that we've been doing a fairly good job with this project to this point. I have here a few quotes. I'm not going to read them out here, but they are quotes from my counterpart as a co-lead of the project in Toronto, Paulina Żyzikowski, a quote from the Director of Settlement and Integration Policy at IRCC, as well as 2 quotes from members of our executive committee, all speaking to the value that we bring to this project. So again, a little bit more of the background, and I shared with you already how it is this project came to be and how Jasper came to be involved in it. Again, that conversation in 2018 initiated the process of developing a National LIP Secretariat. The working group eventually approached Jasper and asked for our participation in leading the project. And part of the reason for asking Jasper to be involved was that the working group found it important that the leadership of the National Local Immigration Partnership Secretariat was representative of the diversity that we find within local immigration partnerships. As I mentioned, local immigration partnerships are provided with funding either through municipalities or through nonprofit organizations. We, of course, cover the entire breadth and height of the country, coast to coast to coast. And we are located both in small communities like Jasper, and Jasper remains the smallest community in the country to host a local immigration partnership. But we're also big cities like Toronto and Vancouver, etc. And so by having a local immigration partnership lead in Toronto, we include large centers housed in a nonprofit organization representing Eastern Canada. And by having Jasper involved, we have a municipally housed local immigration partnership in a small community in the West. So there's some representation there within the leadership, and the representation is then filled out through the membership of the executive committee. I mentioned already that Christopher mentioned that in 2020, we came to council with a request for decision to support our application for this funding, which was carried. And that is essentially the short version of how we became involved. So big question, what are the benefits of participation for Jasper? I think I've hinted at a few in terms of our access to policymakers and decision makers and elevating Jasper's profile. But I think that's an important point, that Jasper's profile within the settlement sector has been significantly elevated through our participation in this project. such that Jasper is well known across the country as an important player in the settlement world. We have direct connections with really national leaders in professional development, in research. We have networks of support. We are connected directly with high-level decision makers and other partners. So through our participation, we are connected to a network of networks. And in that way, when we, for example, need to connect with a researcher to support a project here in Jasper, we have direct access to the best immigration researchers in the country. And one of those, Michael Hahn, is now working on a local project researching Jasper's labor market and the role of newcomers in the labor market. We have strengthened our relationship with one of the municipalities of Jasper's most important external funders, that being IRCC. Again, we've strengthened the MOJ's network of connections regionally and nationally. The project itself, and I'm speaking specifically about the NLS, the National Lift Secretariat Project, brings in significant administrative funds to support the supervision, various administrative functions required by the MOJ to support this project work. In fiscal 23-24, so April to March 2023 to 2024, that totaled over $100,000 in funds that are not tied to salaries or program delivery, but are to support the administrative functions of the municipality itself. The National Settlement Program Manager contributes to MOJ's capacity in multiple areas. That's myself, and I will say, among other things, I'm available to participate in emergency social services, provision planning, the municipal inclusion committees, things of that nature, and support for settlement, our settlement program and our local immigration partnership. So hopefully that is a benefit to the municipality as well. And of course, the program aligns with strategic priorities concerning community health, relationships, and organizational excellence. So just to conclude, what is next? As we mentioned, IRC has put together a call for proposals for funding from 2025 to 2030. This is a very large envelope of funding. Over $10 billion in federal grants will be distributed. And of course, Jasper is invited to submit proposals for our settlement services, our local immigration partnership, and continued participation in the National Lift Secretariat. As I mentioned, there's a new funding stream for indirect services with the national and sector scope, and this funding stream explicitly mentioned this program as a potential recipient. We are now graduating this project from a pilot project to an established component of Canada's immigrant and refugee settlement system. So over the coming period, should we continue to participate, we'll be working hard towards solidifying the role of the National Lift Secretariat as a permanent fixture in Canada's settlement system. And as Christopher mentioned, the MOJ is invited to submit proposals for all three of these programs, which may include expanding the provision of settlement services to Hinton, as well as potentially increasing the staffing capacity of Jasper's role in the National Lift Secretariat. And I'm happy to provide any more details about that or any other issue. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was excellent on both sides. Mr. Reid, you want to follow up?
Well, Deputy Mayor Wilson, the RFD continues, but would it be a good opportunity to ask questions, or should I finish the RFD off properly and then have the questions?
Councillors, you want to jump in now or wait till
Finish and jump in.
carry on?
Thank you. So just to finish off the RFD, I will add in the tooting of the horn of these three streams. We could spend hours describing how powerful the contribution in our community and regionally and nationally is. But when I think about what our community benefits the most from, it's having expertise in our community that meets our unique needs. So as Councillor Waxer will recognize the phrase local solutions for local challenges, we are very lucky in the sense that this program gives us the capacity to meet the unique needs of Jasper. We had over 100 Ukrainians settled here or were relocated here. We have a continual regular stream of immigrants to Canada who think that Jasper might be a great place to come, and they get here and we support them in success. And I could go on for a very long time, and Doug did a good job of describing some of the successes. I would crow from the rooftops if I was allowed to. It's a wonderful setup that we have. And a little anecdote, One of our settlement team went to the national conference. At the national conference was mentored and guided by Doug, but also did that crazy amount of networking, attended some sessions that directly impacted the service provision in our community. And all of that was funded through the contract. And I think I really want to highlight that financially, this contract is a net win. But for the community service, I could not imagine a better way of getting the kind of impact that we're getting every day. So as we go to finish off the RFD relevant legislation, this is directly related to our equity, diversity, inclusion policy, and the Municipal Government Act does allow for municipalities to operate in this contract the way we operate it. So I wanted to highlight that. Inclusion considerations, as I mentioned, this program meets many of the aspects of equity, diversity, inclusion goals of our municipality, especially through the excellent support we deliver to newcomers in our community. Strategic relevance, you'll see there are a lot of council's strategic priorities here. Embrace our growing diversity, leverage and create opportunities for greater inclusion, recognize the fundamental importance of tourism economy. Many of our newcomers to the community take frontline service roles in our community in the tourism sector. Relationships, collaborate with other municipalities, orders of government, Indigenous partners, and advocacy associations. Welcome the expertise, innovation, creativity, and commitment of community members, groups, associations, and businesses. And ensure residents receive quality service that provides strong value for dollar. As I mentioned, this contract, all three of them come with administrative funds that are a net revenue source for the community or for the budget. So the contract, the administrative and supervisory add-on payments is included in the 2024 approved operating budget as part of the 2021 to 2025 contract period. The 25 to 30, well, to 29, right? No, the rate will go right into 30, yeah. So the 25 to 30 contract period, the call for applications is out now. That's why you're seeing this in front of you. Should we discontinue this partnership, we would need to replace between 45 and 75,000 in annual revenue. It fluctuates, and Doug mentioned 100,000 is the upcoming number. It depends on the activity of the national programs, especially. The possible expansions of services would result in additional revenue to cover the administration of those services during the contract period. And that completes our presentation. And of course, we're open for any and all questions.
Thank you, guys. Councillors, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Oldhoff, for coming today. It was great, and I fully support this. A couple falls ago, I think 2022, when Mayor Ireland traveled to Ottawa with a Rocky Mountain delegation and was welcomed into the Canadian Senate by Senator Sorensen. One of the things that she mentioned when she was welcoming him was just how Jasper's flourished under Mayor Ireland's tenure, but by providing programs to integrate many new immigrants and refugees through our settlement services. So I think that's great that we are seeing nationally, and this is amazing. My question for you is, I know there are a lot of temporary foreign workers living in Jasper, and how do these programs support them?
That's great. Thank you very much. It's a very important and interesting question because temporary foreign workers are not considered eligible clients for settlement services. And so when we talk about the specific provision of settlement services, IRCC does not envision temporary residents as recipients of those services. However, local immigration partnerships have a broader perspective and take, as I mentioned, a whole community approach to welcoming newcomers into the community and providing supports for them. And so when local immigration partnerships, excuse me, who are again directed to provide supports for eligible clients, that is permanent residents, they are doing work that includes making municipal services more accessible to newcomers. That might be through extending information to people in multiple languages, creating more welcoming spaces. They're working with employers to create more welcoming and inclusive workplaces. They are working with healthcare providers, with schools, with employment offices, all to make these services more accessible to people who are new to the community and specifically new to the country. All of those supports create an environment that is more welcoming to temporary residents as well as permanent residents. So where settlement services are more restricted in the eligible clients for the services they provide, local immigration partnerships are able to provide essentially the conditions for newcomers to flourish regardless of the type of permanent or non-permanent status that they have. The national project, where I think this is beneficial to communities like our own, and I will say that Jasper in particular has a large number of temporary foreign workers. Temporary residents are currently the largest source of permanent residents in Canada. So temporary workers, temporary residents come to Canada, gain experience, and then transition to pathways of permanent residence and eventually citizenship. So it's a very important thing for communities like our own to be able to support those people as early as possible so that they can succeed in the community. The national work that we do allows us to convey that message directly to policymakers. So we are able to advocate for local immigration partnerships to expand the scope of their activities to better support temporary residents. And I think that's really where the combination of having settlement services, which again are directed to permanent residents, and local immigration partnerships that can provide more sort of blanket welcoming supports for the community is a great combination for a community like ours.
Go ahead, Mr.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, thank you. And on to council, I just want to highlight that temporary foreign workers in our community are still part of our community. So for example, community outreach services, temporary foreign workers are eligible to access those services. And as Doug mentioned, a concrete example, we might have translated something through settlement services into a language. A temporary foreign worker arrives to the COS office, to the outreach office. Well, now we have that document translated already. So that's like an easy, simple, concrete spillover of how settlement, while they cannot directly support a temporary foreign worker, the work they have completed spills over and supports all members of the community.
Sorry, just before passing on to other councillors, I'll just jump in there and ask a question regarding that previous conversation. And would some of these services be available to newcomers regardless of their citizenship status? So like they could be Canadian coming from other places in Canada, or is it specific only to non-citizens?
I'll start. Thank you very much. Thanks for the question, Councillor Wilson. Again, the same sort of situation applies where settlement services have a relatively narrow category of eligible recipients, where LIPs are involved in more community development work, creating the conditions for inclusivity in the community in general. And so if those conditions facilitate the inclusion of newcomers from other countries, they can also in many cases facilitate the inclusion of newcomers from other parts of Canada. So I would say in general, the work that LIPs do make communities better able to accommodate and support newcomers regardless of their origins, even if that's not the express intent of the program itself.
Great, right on, thank you. Councillor? And we're Mayor Island.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you to probably Mr. Oldveld, but thank you both for the presentation, and either can I'm sure answer my question. I have two, and they're not particularly relevant to the request. I mean, I'm supportive of the request, but I do have some questions. In the discussion of value, you've got a number of really laudatory comments from others, and credit to you. That's great. One of them, your counterpart in Lloydminster, speaks about the fact that of the 89 communities who have local immigration partnerships, it is predominantly in the east rather than in the west. Is there a reason for that? I appreciate that Jasper is sort of at the top of this game here, and getting national recognition, which is great, but can you tell me why there has not been equal pickup in the west?
It's a good question. And thank you for it, Mayor Ireland. I'm not entirely sure that my colleague in Lloydminster's comments were entirely accurate. I will say that the program started in Ontario. So in Ontario, prior to 2008, there were a number of community coalitions around newcomer support. And those were eventually funded by IRCC to continue their work. So they pre-existed. So starting in 2008, a number of pre-existing organizations became local immigration partnerships. Following that, through succession of funding calls for proposals from IRCC, additional LIPs came on board. So the program started in Ontario and expanded both east and west from there. If we look at the numbers now, I would have to go back and refer to them. I think probably if we drew a dividing line sort of on the eastern boundary of Manitoba and said, that's west and that's east, there would be more in the east because more of the population is to the east of that line. But the program has expanded extremely rapidly in what's known as the Prairies and Northern Territories region, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Northern Territories, as well as in the BC Yukon region. I would say faster in those two regions over the past funding period than has been the case in the east. So there is much more balance than I think Mr. Mensere in Lloydminster may have implied.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate it. It's also an opportunity to vault you even higher, I think, to recognize leader in the West, because I'm sure it's going to grow. The other question I had, two left actually. You mentioned that your counterparts, I think, primarily operate through nonprofits. Is Jasper the only outlier that operates through the municipality, or are there others that do the same?
Yeah, not at all alone there. And I think, again, I would have to refer to the numbers. I think perhaps a small majority might be housed in nonprofit organizations, but certainly a large number of local immigration partnerships are housed in municipalities. And it is a requirement, even in the case of LIPs that are housed in nonprofit organizations, that they have the support of the municipality. It's a requirement of their application that they have a letter of support from the municipality, regardless of where they're housed.
Thank you for that. And my final question, on one of your slides, you talk about the success of the National Secretariat, and you give some examples, one of which is a Canadian index for measuring integration. Has Jasper been measured? And at some point, could you share with us where we fit on that index?
Yes, certainly. The Canadian Index for Measuring Inclusion is a national project that we are working very closely with, again, to work at those levels of custom geographies. So where they have measures at the level of census divisions, so larger geographies. In the case of Jasper, it might be all right, actually, because I think our census division might not include any other communities. I have to double check that. But we're in the process of providing them with custom shape files so that they can provide those indices at those custom geographies. And I could very easily provide that to council and to the administration for Jasper. And we also have a working group that's developing custom measures of inclusion for communities like our own. And so a couple of approaches going there to getting accurate or at least informative measures of the job that we do of including newcomers.
Well, thank you for that. At some point, and not to rush you, I would appreciate seeing that. I think that is a really good reflection of the success of the program. If the integration is high, then that's an indication of great success. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Councillor Rabbit.
Thank you for the presentation, and I don't have a question, but just wanted to express real appreciation for the very articulate and clearly outlined presentation, but also from Director Reed's real enthusiasm for the importance of this project. For me, it's a very important, not a project, but a component of what the municipality provides. And I just wanted to express my appreciation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I would also like to add my admiration for the positive comments that you received from your counterparts, and in particular, draw the attention of council to the fact that Jasper has been confirmed to continue on the executive committee. I think that's a huge recognition of the contribution that you personally and we've been able to contribute. And I'm hoping, as a mature partner of the LIP, that we can continue to pilot other projects and run additional programs. And I don't know if you have anything that you might be able to comment that you may be working on in the future that might be able to enhance what we offer here as well as across the country.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Malik. Yeah, there are a few things that we're developing proposals for that I'm quite excited about. One of them is development of a network of rural LIPs, of small community LIPs that I think does essentially, or will do essentially two things. We'll do a better job of sharing amongst peers best practices and approaches we can take to supporting newcomers in smaller communities and addressing the unique challenges that newcomers face, you know, when settling in a small and in our case, somewhat remote community. But also, I think collectively advocating again to funders and policymakers to better support those programs in smaller communities. A second thing that we're working on is to develop greater degree of collaboration and mutual support around engagement with Indigenous communities. And I know there's something that we're trying to work on across the country at multiple levels, including here in Jasper. And one of the great benefits of being involved in this national project is that, again, as I mentioned, we have access to sort of the national leaders in many of these areas. And so through participation in the National Lit Secretariat, we are connected directly with the people that are at the forefront of improving engagement between different levels of government and communities across the country with Indigenous partners. So that's something that we can bring into our community and I think help us move forward more effectively in engaging with Indigenous communities here. The third thing that we're doing that I'm very excited about is developing an updated handbook for local immigration partnerships. So in 2013, another organization called the Pathways to Prosperity created a handbook for new local immigration partnership coordinators. And when I came into the municipality in 2017, that was the first document that I held that helped me understand what we were trying to do. But the program has developed so much in the past decade that we're now at a stage where we can take what was then, I think, about a 15-page document and write a book. You know, not necessarily a thick tome, but at least put together a detailed description of the range of possibilities that are available to local immigration partnerships with some concrete examples of what communities have done across the country to support newcomers. And so those are three things that I think will support us both in terms of you know, engaging more closely with our partners in other smaller, more remote communities, engaging more effectively with Indigenous communities, and then whenever the time comes that maybe a new person comes into this role, or we bring in new staff to do this type of work, that there's a detailed and accurate and up-to-date bit of literature that they can refer to better jump into their work and be more effective from the start.
Thank you very much for that. And you mentioned attendance at a national conference. I would like to remind council and directors that anytime we're involved in anything where we have an opportunity to attend conferences, we should always be promoting the fact that we can host those conferences here. And I'm looking forward to supporting this request, but also for all of us to keep in the back of our mind, we should be welcoming individuals and organizations and anything that we participate in to come to Jasper and consider that to be an opportunity for them to host their conference here.
I can offer a quick response. Every time I go to a conference, people ask me if the next one can be in Jasper. So if there's any possibility, I'm in full support.
Councillor Waxer.
I thought of a question after the fact. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the regional concept, whether it would only be to the town of Hinton, or if expanding to Edson or Yellowhead County, Grand Cache.
Deputy Mayor Wilson through to Councillor Waxer. Thank you for the question. Right now, we are looking at Hinton because, again, we did the baby step of the pilot project. There was success. So we look to Hinton as a natural place to create the beginnings of a regional spoken hub type idea. But going as far as Edson is not currently in the plan because we we aren't ready, in essence. That would we consider going? Should this be as successful as we believe it will be? Then yes, we would consider that and expanding more spokes out. And one of the great things about IRCC's funding that Mr. Olthoff could speak to, there has been regular opportunities for expansion of service should the need arise and the provision methodology be successful. So when Hinton is successful, there may be the door open to broader, Grand Prairie, Grand Cache. I could list a whole bunch of communities that we may look at serving or assisting and supporting. But right now, we're starting with where we believe we can be successful and grow from there.
And supplementary to that, I wondered, would it only be for settlement services or also for local immigration partnerships?
Right now, we're looking at settlement services and depending again on the opportunities that may arise and the knowledge we gain, whether or not any other program might expand. But right now, it's simply about the opportunity to create support services in another community in our region that will, of course, benefit us too, as many of those who get service will then grow. Anyway, I think that's where I'll stop.
Thank you. Well, it does seem like there's quite a bit of support. I do feel we probably have a motion coming to for the application, but I would like to ask a question, just to kind of make myself feel good. But so, what, if any, are the risks to the municipality, hidden costs, extra positions, if we move forward with this application?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So the risks to the municipality, as we have 5 years of experience with this, we're very familiar with how IRCC likes to work, how we can integrate our sort of provision to match what they need. I would say this is a very low risk opportunity. Let us say that one of the things we propose isn't successful. We believe that IRCC is very supportive of attempting things. And if they don't work, we learn from that and we fix it, try to attempt it in another way. So I could say there's zero risk. That's where I sit. I absolutely do not feel any risk whatsoever with this application from a professional opinion.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Boxer?
I would be prepared to make the motion. The recommendation is that committee receive the presentation for information, and committee recommend council approve submitting an application to continue the partnership with Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship Canada, IRCC, to develop existing and expanded national, regional, and local services for another 5-year term.
Thank you for that. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. The motion carries. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for the presentations. Okay, we're moving on to new business item 7.2, Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. There's an attachment on the agenda. I'll send that over to Mr. Gibbon to enter.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So administration is here with a recommendation on the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Back in August of 2023, committee referred the matter of joining the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy to a committee meeting following the 2024 budget discussions. The Global Covenant was brought to the council table in recognition that it is a network of over 10,000 cities worldwide, representing a significant global climate action network. The primary goal of the covenant is to enhance local response to climate change by promoting collaboration, knowledge sharing, and the implementation of climate action plans. There are currently 47 members of the covenant in cities and communities in Canada, only 2 of which are currently in Alberta, Edmonton and Canmore. Back in August, committee considered joining the covenant, but at that time chose to essentially postpone a decision until after the 2024 budget discussions. In recognition of essentially staff capacity and the fact that we're going to have a discussion about the energy and environment manager position. At budget, council did approve the creation of a 0.5 energy and environment position for a 2-year term to begin this year in 2024. At this time, administration is recommending that council further postpone a decision on joining the covenant until later on in 2024, July, to allow sufficient time for the new position to be filled and onboarded, and then also for us to assess whether that 0.5 position has the capacity to be able to also take on the additional workload that is responsibility of joining the covenant. As I mentioned in the report in August of 2023, members of the covenant are expected to develop a greenhouse gas emissions inventory to assess climate risks and vulnerabilities of their communities, to define climate mitigation, resiliency, and energy targets, and to create full climate action plans. Certainly those pieces of work would be within the scope of the position, but recognizing that it's a 0.5 position rather than a full-time position, we want to just on board start with the core work that we know that we already have, and then assess how much of this additional work is already things that we would be doing. So the recommendation from administration is that council postpone consideration of joining the global covenant for mayors for climate and energy until July 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Councillors, questions? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I guess my first question is, in addition to the half position that we've approved in the budget, what additional costs annually are there to be part of this, the global covenant of mayors?
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Melnick. To my knowledge, there are no membership fees. So certainly when I wrote the RFD earlier this year, there weren't. I haven't checked that on writing this RFD, but my recollection is that there was no cost to join. It was essentially making a commitment to undertake the work that members are obligated to undertake.
And just a follow-up question to that. What are the cost estimates, or do you have one at this point to complete what the membership is expected to do, as in a full climate action plan for the municipality was one of the points that members are expected to participate in, as well as the other items. It seems like a fairly significant amount of effort that needs to be done over and above the labor of just a half position. And I'm just wondering if we have an idea of what that might be down the road.
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Melnick. So really, much of this work is the type of work that we would expect the energy and environment position 0.5 or 1.0 to do. It's just about how much of it they can get done in a reasonable amount of time. Additionally, some of the work is already underway. Council will remember our climate adaptation study that was, we had a presentation to committee a while ago. That work continues. That would provide, it would really address the second bullet point, assess climate risks and vulnerabilities. So that's underway and in progress. The details of what a full climate action plan would look like would be something that we would examine in detail in advance of making the decision to join the covenant. I would imagine that there's some variability in our previous research. I didn't see any specified form or format of what a climate action plan had. So I think that there's some optionality available to member municipalities.
And just to complete that, with Canmore being signed on, similar size, maybe larger community, similar circumstance in a tourism environment, working in the mountains, etc. We could probably learn from Canmore and gain significant, insight into what that might involve. And we haven't made any insight or any movement that way yet.
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Malik. No, not at this time. Again, this was really subject to the establishment of the position and then ultimately hiring. But as I think you heard in the previous presentation, the municipality participates in a lot of networks of municipalities working in similar thematic areas. And so whether it's in housing, we have a close connection with the Banff housing coordinator in local immigration, as you heard earlier, and we certainly would do the same in environment. And so we would imagine that one of the first things we would encourage anybody filling this position to do would be to reach out to colleagues in other municipalities.
Thank you for that, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillors? Any further questions? Or a motion? Ireland?
I will make the motion that committee recommends council postpone the consideration of joining the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy until July 2024. In making this motion, I am reminded that I was the one that initially suggested this. That was on the heels of attendance at FCM earlier this year, where I listened to a panel and they spoke about the potential benefits of the Global Covenant. I think it's unfortunate that it's not called the Global Covenant of Communities for Climate and Energy. I think it would have been a better choice, but the name is the name. I brought this forward initially because I think we are going to, by necessity, do the very work that is expected. It ties in, of course, with our strategic priority of recognizing the fundamental value of our tourism economy, and given the threats that we face from climate change, this is work that we have to undertake. And if we're going to undertake it anyway, it would be nice to undertake it in the context of membership in a group that is working in the same direction. I think there is a real opportunity to dovetail with the Jasper Destination Stewardship Plan, which Council endorsed just at the end of 2023. That document speaks about values aligned visitors as the type of visitor that we expect and hope to attract. And it seems to me that the community that can say that it is a member of the Global Covenant taking action on climate and energy is more likely to attract those values aligned visitors. So it plays in with exactly the work that we have to undertake in any event. So while I am still interested in the opportunity that this presents, particularly positioning Jasper in an international market as a community that values the environment and takes seriously our role in protecting both the environment and our economic base. I understand administration's concern about taking time to do this right. And so if it is delayed for a decision in July, that is fine. I still think ultimately I am supportive, but I am at this point also supportive of the delay. So I make the motion in that context.
Thank you for that. Any further comments, questions? Everybody understands the motion? Call the question, all in favor? There are none opposed, that motion carries. We're moving on to item 7.3, Community Conversations Annual Report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I will cover this one off in council. So before you do see the 2023 Community Conversations Annual Report. And the recommendation, of course, is that committee receive the Community Conversations Annual Report for January to December 2023 for information. And again, Community Development Manager Lisa Riddell does send her regrets. She loves this information and she would love to be here presenting, but we have too much work to do. So you get me. The options are that committee direct administration to bring forward additional information on any items of interest in the Community Conversations Report to a future committee meeting. On September 21st, 2021, Council approved the updated Community Conversations Policy A105, which outlines Council's commitment to meaningful resident engagement to ensure that municipal services and programs remain responsive to changing community needs. In February 2023, a revised policy A105 was adopted by Council, directing administration to narrow the scope to focus on the life stage focused conversations. From January to December 2023, 37 life stage focused community conversations took place, 4 in January and 3 in every other month. In February of 2023, the early childhood and school age conversations participants wanted to try combining their previously separated conversations. So instead of 2 separate 1-hour conversations per month, they took part in 1.5-hour conversation altogether each month from February onwards. Here's a breakdown of attendance in 2023 compared to 2022 numbers. And I'll just make that note. Of course, municipal attendance at the early childhood and school age conversations is high because the municipality of Jasper offers many services for this age group, such as Wildflowers childcare, out of school care, 3 outreach workers, and a settlement worker that specifically provide services to that group. So them being around the table is very useful for everyone involved. There's a list of organizations and groups who have signed up to participate in community conversations. Those in italics attend regularly, which we call 2/3 of the time, and the rest attend periodically, which we consider 3 times a year, or maybe you might think of that as quarterly. So you can see that there are quite a few groups in our community. I think that list is like two dozen, greater than 2 dozen. And you can see there's a few organizations that we target this year to hopefully increase their participation in 2024. So for the discussion, at Community Conversations, participants identified the changing needs of residents as well as opportunities to take action in response to those needs. A review of all the trends and opportunities identified across all community conversations throughout 2023 reveals a few thematic areas under which the majority of trends and opportunities identified could be grouped. These have remained similar to 2022, but not exactly the same. In random order, diversity, inclusion, and connection organizations continue to see elevated levels of participation in programming events and initiatives that bring people together, especially those with diversity, cultural, and inclusive theme. The desire for in-person connection has never been higher. Internet and technology, a lack of internet access and low digital literacy can create barriers for folks to access support systems, coursework, and processes that have largely shifted to online since the pandemic. Woven into this same theme is the increased time in front of screens for many children and youth. The effect of social media influencers on youth has been noted, as well as with reports of discriminatory or offensive behavior towards others. A broad concept of mental health. There are more complex mental health situations arising for all ages as we see the impact of years of isolation associated with the pandemic and a steady influx of newcomers coming to Jasper to work in the tourism economy. Housing. Limited access to affordable, stable housing continues to cause stress for Jasperites across all ages. Seniors are looking to downsize, families need adequate housing, staff need stable accommodation to bridge them between their seasonal work. Unpredictable rent increases are still causing significant stress. And perhaps council, some of you may have read the recent report where Jasper has the highest rate of rental increase of the communities that were surveyed in Alberta at nearly 40%. That's our rate of rental increase over the last year, 39%. Additionally, some residents live in precarious housing tied to unstable employment. Financial stress, residents of all ages continue to grapple with rising cost of groceries, rent, and utilities. This is evident with prolonged increase in requests for relief funding, use of the food bank and food recovery, etc. Crisis response, the need for crisis response services, including one-on-one support, as well as financial relief specifically for folks involved in the non-criminal trauma remains high. Community outreach services also supports a steady stream of folks coming in through town who are homeless, and those needs remain consistent. Transportation. The new transit system has been very well received. It has been well received by many for which transportation was previously a barrier. And we've got some survey results, and I should make a note here. This, so the 89% say community conversations is a valuable use of their time. That was 89% of the survey respondents, not 89% of everyone, because they all didn't reply to the survey. And 89% again of the survey respondents feel more connected to what's going on in town and the services available through participating in community conversations. 79% say community conversation results in more collaboration between the municipality and external groups and or individuals in the community. And 84% agree that community conversations is an effective way to document the changing priorities of residents and report that information directly to council. 79% have told a friend about community conversations. Several groups have taken action in response to social priorities raised at community conversations. In 2023, there were a variety of actions taken by several participants, both municipal and non-municipal. Here are some of those actions. Jasper Employment Education Center launched an online resume board for older adults looking for part-time work. This initiative came out of community conversations about supporting older adults. The Jasper Municipal Library started a tween takeover program for ages 8 to 11 after a gap in programming for that age group was raised at community conversations. Jasper Municipal Council passed a resolution at Alberta municipalities advocating for the needs of vulnerable tenants after the rent increases around town came up at community conversations. Alberta Health Services supported Community Outreach Services proposal to trial a social prescribing for older adults program in Jasper after the opportunity came up at community conversations. And we were successful with that program. We now have an extra worker in the COS office doing exactly that work, which has been a real benefit to especially the seniors in our community. Men's Shed Group mobilized and started making their efforts known after participants from community conversations urged the group to share their goals. CN started connecting their staff with key resources like the Community Guide, Community Dinners, and Santa's Anonymous in Jasper after attending community conversations. And OCCAN, which offers support to first responders, was able to connect to the Jasper Crisis Team, or Crisis Team Jasper, as they may end up being called, to formalize a partnership through them to offer support locally after attending community conversations. I mentioned the policy already. Strategic relevance, communicate and engage with residents, welcome the expertise, innovation, creativity, and commitment of community members, groups, associations, and businesses. Entrust our staff to develop healthy relationships with the people they serve, even if I can't say healthy relationships. Nurture our most important relationship, which are those within our organization. Activities that result from community conversations also advance these priorities, take proactive steps to reduce the risk of people becoming vulnerable and respond when they are vulnerable. Promote and enhance recreational and cultural opportunities and spaces, enable and facilitate events that provide opportunities to increase community connections, embrace our growing diversity, leverage and create opportunities for greater inclusion. The financial implications or the cost to implement the community conversations policy are within the 2023 operating budget and included in the draft 2024 operating budget, which I realize I should have rewritten to say are included in the past 2024 operating budget. And the notes for each individual conversation can be found on our website. The link is there, which is also a great resource for those who are wondering what happened at a community conversation. You can always go back and review. And of course, I am hopefully open to answer your questions. I'm open to answer your questions, and hopefully I'll be able to do justice.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Councillors, questions? Councillor Boxer.
One thing that I noticed that wasn't missing that I think that I've observed by attending the community conversations is the increased collaboration between municipal departments or segments. You talk about increased collaboration between other municipality and other organizations, but I believe I've observed increased collaboration between different segments of the municipality. Would that be true?
Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to Councillor Waxer. I would say I've also observed that and participated in it. We, as a municipality led by CAO Gibbon, that's one of our goals. One of our corporate objectives is to be more collaborative within the organization. And the reason that we mentioned that strategic priority that council has around within the municipalities, because yes, I would agree, we have seen that as well. I can think of certainly some of the opportunities like the community rinks, the outdoor rinks, That's definitely us, between operations and community development, collaborating to provide the best service within our purviews, but shared. So I would agree with you, certainly, Councillor Wexler. Thank you.
Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to you, to Director Reid. Great report. Thank you. Just if you give us a little bit of clarification on crisis response. We continue to see support a steady stream of folk coming through town who are homeless and those that need to remain consistent. So is that employees coming to town to work for employers, or is that people coming through town looking for work? Can you define that?
Thank you. Certainly, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to Councillor Kelleher, it is the latter. We are definitely getting, actually, I might have misspoke there. The people we are seeing, the folks we are seeing, are people who arrive here with no previous plan. So they're not arriving to a promised job from one of our great employers that doesn't work out. It's not that. We are seeing people arrive in Jasper either through the goal of getting on their way to some larger center, and this is where their transportation got them to, or they don't even have that big of a plan. They just are on the move, the typical kind of transient that you might think of. And those folks need help and they need support. And so our office has responded quite well, and council responded with extra funding this year to address that need. But through the community conversations, we are also seeing other organizations stepping up, and the crisis team is definitely one of the biggest players in supporting those folks as well.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I have a couple of questions for you, Director Reid. Thank you for your report. Internet and technology, and I apologize for not being extra prepared, but can you remind me what we had some computers, laptops we were going to bring into like a library of things, but keep it where we're at with that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to Councillor Hall. That program now is funded through the budget that council passed. And so I believe we're in the purchasing process already to get those, what we will call them lending laptops with internet access. So they will be at the Library of Things, which, just to review, is housed at the Jasper Activity Center. And so great access to the Library of Things through the great hours available at the Activity Center. But also residents should know that you can book items in the Library of Things online. And now, in this particular case, if you're having difficulty accessing the internet, how would you use the internet to book the thing you want to use to access the internet? But we can certainly assist at the Activity Center front desk, as of course can they assist at the library with internet and access. So we do have some good resources in our community about to be augmented by those lending laptops at the Library of Things.
I have a couple more questions, if that's okay with everyone. I like lending laptop. That's sounds good. Regards to housing, 39% in like that, those are very scary numbers considering how vulnerable people are and how the cost of living is so high. This might be a question for administration, but at the municipal conference in the fall, we put forward a resolution that was passed regarding more supports for vulnerable tenants, residential tenants. When will how does that work? Will we hear about that at some point, or is it just get kind of just want to know how that works?
Thanks. I can probably speak to that, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So Alberta municipalities regularly updates members with what they do in terms of advocacy. The first step for any resolution that's passed would be that it would go to the appropriate standing committee of AB Munis. The standing committee would look at it, and then they go through and classify their approach to advocacy. I'm not aware of where in that process our resolution is, but I can certainly check. They do maintain on their website a list of advocacy resources, and they generally have status updates on the resolutions. I can certainly look at that and send a link around to council that should provide the latest update.
Just have one more question regarding transit. I'd love to hear happy stories. Do you have any examples of some residents that have struggled with transit and now aren't, or just want to leave us with heartwarming stories.
This is Deputy Mayor Wilson through to Councillor Hall. Do I have a collection of personal stories about the transit? No. However, we do know that the usage meets the needs that were addressed through community conversations or highlighted at community conversations. I mean, the obvious one, of course, the sort of the school kids at JPL, that's working out. The ability for people to get their laundry from far, one end of town to the laundromat. The ability of people to take a couple of kids and go get groceries and be able to do that successfully. These are the kind of anecdotes that the public transit system has enabled, yes.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I just want to acknowledge that through our funding to the municipal library, access to the internet has now been increased by the additional 1 day a week. I think that's a positive step. And I did pop into the library yesterday, and day one of opening on a Monday in the new year, and there were a few people in the library, which was good to see. Regarding the transportation, unrelated to this particular report, but I think administration will be coming back to council in subsequent meetings with ridership numbers, so we have a feel of how that is looking. But having heard some anecdotal comments about who's using the transit, where they're going, and how often it's being used has been interesting. Just wanted to comment on the presentation of this year's summary of the community conversations and the amount of participants of the organizations. I found very helpful to understand the reach, and certainly hope that we're encouraging all of these organizations to continue to participate and provide feedback to us. I think this is an interesting change that we did last year when we went to the age group, as opposed to how we had had community conversations before. And I'm just wondering if there's any commentary you might have as to that change among the groups.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to Councillor Melnick. So we don't have any I don't have any direct comments from people, but what we can say is at the community conversations, the change is well received. So something like, recycling was very big in the environmental community conversation. Well, that conversation is still occurring. It's actually occurring more broadly. How does recycling affect the school age groups, and how does recycling affect the seniors groups? So we believe that the change has been a net benefit for the depth of conversation at each of these age groups, and that less stretching or less siloing of each conversation. So we believe anecdotally that it's worked out well from the facilitations that we have run with all those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you to Director Reed. I'm interested in the cost associated with this engagement opportunity. So community conversations are intended and are resulting in engagement with our residents, which is valuable. But it comes at some cost, and I appreciate that from the financial indication you've indicated that it's within the budget. But it seems to me there must still be a cost. So as I add this up, and my math could be suspect, but for municipal attendance at these community conversations, I count up 109 opportunities when I add up all the numbers, and roughly an hour each. So there's 109 hours roughly of staff time put into these. I'm going to assume that there is going to be some preparation time and some after time preparing minutes and so forth. So maybe that 109 becomes 150 or 180. I don't know what it becomes, and I don't know the average wage, but there is a cost. And it'd be nice to know what that cost is. And it would also be nice, at least for me, to understand the opportunity cost. So when we began this several years ago as an engagement opportunity, we didn't manufacture another 150 or 170 hours of staff time. Seems to me something had to be dropped in order to allow staff to attend in this engagement opportunity. So there is a cost to that, it seems to me. And I'm just wondering what the trade-off was. So there's a financial cost in terms of hours, but staff time is not unlimited. It is one of our real caps on capacity is available time. And so if the time is being spent on this, it's not being spent on something else. And can you tell me what may have dropped off of the other services that we were providing? And instead of focusing this time on community conversations.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, through to your worship, that is a great question. And I think I'm gonna have to give a multi-pronged answer. So if I start from, say, the frontline service provision people, the folks who show up to community conversations from the swimming pool, as an example, show up to the early childhood conversation. So those folks, it has always been part of their job to provide responsive programming to the needs of the community. So that hour that person spent at the community conversation is an hour they would have spent finding out what the community needed through other mechanisms. So I would say there's zero cost. I would say, in fact, that there's far better benefit to that same hour where they would have spent collecting anecdotes and talking to sort of best estimates of where they might find the information. This hour now is far more focused, and the people around the table are there to provide that exact information that the swimming pool frontline staff that attend need to know. So from that level, I would say it's actually a cost savings. We are getting better information for the same time, or perhaps even less time than in the past. From the organization of the community conversations and the administrative support to facilitate those conversations, twofold answer. One, there were previously, and in every municipality I have other experience in, there are meetings like this, sometimes called, well, it doesn't really matter what they're called in other communities, but these type of meetings do occur. Ours, we would proclaim, are more efficient. And in the change made fairly recently, in some years ago, the director of community, or sorry, the manager of community development position was made a municipal position. And so part of that manager's job is to run these conversations. So the capacity of the municipality was increased at that time to accommodate this. I will also say the same statement I made about the frontline staff, those folks who show up, they would have been doing this work anyway. We also would have been doing this work as part of outreach to make sure that our services were meeting the needs of the community. So when we get to what has dropped off, I don't believe anything has dropped off. I believe we're just operating more efficiently, and we are getting better value for the time we would have spent anyway across all levels of that. Even my time is better spent because I don't, because I am able to instantly grab the priorities of the community. So Men's Shed, as an example, supporting Men's Shed is, I can see based on the conversation elements that have occurred, that supporting Men's Shed is great from our direct community needs. It's also a great program that I know professionally is worth supporting. I could find 50 great programs to investigate, whereas I'm able to focus my efforts and my staff team's efforts because we have the data from our community. So being a data-driven decision-making organization is way better enhanced by these conversations. Did I answer all the spokes of your question, Your Worship?
I think sufficiently. I do appreciate the response. The fact that you see this as better value is the important part of the answer from my perspective. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions, comments, motions? It's a simple one. Councillor Callahan.
I make a motion that committee receive the community conversations annual report for January to December 2023 for information.
Thank you for that, Councillor Callahan. Everybody understand the question? I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. Motion carries. We're moving on to, thank you, Mr. Reid, for that. Moving on to new business item 7.4, Alberta Tourism Advocacy Summit, and it's a verbal by Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I asked that this be added just to give notice to council that I expect this will be a motion next week at regular council meeting. Tourism Industry of Alberta Association has a summit in early February. The dates are February 4th to 6th. Councillor Wilson, or Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I and our CAO, Mr. Given, attended the session summit last year in Edmonton. I found it to be a really worthwhile session. I know that our colleagues from Canmore and Banff intend to be in attendance this year. I think it's a good place for us to be, again, given our priority on the fundamental importance of our tourism economy, and having connections with those in the industry, I think is important. So I bring this forward just to give councillors an opportunity to think about it. The one downside is that it is a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and the Tuesday is, of course, a regular council meeting. And so I am suggesting that perhaps two councillors and Mr. Given attend a day again this year as we did last year. But I just wanted to give some notice so councillors can think about whether they have an interest in attending, and we can hopefully resolve that next week at council.
Thank you for that. Can you repeat the dates?
February 4th till the 6th, and I think it starts late afternoon on the Sunday, which gives time to travel in on the Sunday, and ends about noon on Tuesday is my recollection. Well, at 3, Mr. Given is saying. So relatively mid-afternoon it ends on the Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any comments on that? So we have in front of us now next week. Okay, we're moving on to item 8, motion action list. Mr. Given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So the first item would be the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Obviously, that has been presented, and we will recommend that it can be replaced by the update, which would see it come back in July of 2024. The other one that I can provide a verbal update, and hopefully that'll satisfy the issue for now, is the Forest Park hotel parking. Council had previously directed administration to continue discussions with the property to see whether a solution could be reached to sort of provide some additional availability for on-street parking. Director Greathead has worked to be in contact with the property. They've gone through some staffing changes there, I believe. But Director Greathead and the ops team are going to try I guess what I call a lightweight solution of temporarily bagging the no parking signs in periods where it's not required, and then giving the hotel property 24 hours notice when they expect that they'll have to unbag the signs. If that makes sense. So the signs will stay in place, and Director Greathead has ordered those the appropriate equipment to be able to do that. So we'll give that a try and see. Obviously, we had a little bit of time prior to this most recent snowfall where it wasn't a particularly pressing issue, but administration has contacted the property, is going to be trying a solution to see how that works. And if there's any additional information that's required, we'll bring that back to council, but I don't foresee that there will be. So administration would recommend that item could come off because that delegation request has been followed up on. And other than that, I believe all of the other items are on track as listed in the motion action list. So it'd just be those two updates. The update to the date for the global covenant and the removal of the Forest Park Hotel items.
Thank you for that. Councillors, any questions on the motion action list? Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. My question is about a motion that's not on this list, but back in the fall, we moved administration to look into earlier start times for our public transit route. I've had a few messages from parents this week of school-age children over grade 7. We're about to hit -40. I'm just wondering where the transit at with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Hall. So I can say that it won't be in place for the cold weather this week. I was working with our manager of utilities, who's also handling transit. We've been looking at some changed route timings and additional service, trying to correlate that with the feedback that we received from residents. And there are some the primary issues we're going to try to solve is to, one, ensure that there's enough capacity for all qualifying students. And that will likely involve what we'll call platooning, running the existing route that's already going and then having another bus follow behind. So we're working that in along with allowing an additional run earlier before the existing school special that would be open to the general public and older age students. And at this time, it looks like that route would also go up further into a couple of new stops we'd look to establish in the what I'll call the northeast end of town. So we are working on that. I think it's likely that we would be launching that for the back half of January or the start of February would probably make a reasonable time. We appreciate that that's, there's still a fair bit of winter has gone through, especially when we change our schedule mid-May. But I think this is the nature of the thing. We want to be as responsive as possible and recognize that the goal of this first year is to try to respond and adjust so that we really dial in our system for future years. So we would expect to be communicating that to the public later on this month with a likely start time of early February.
Thank you for that. Any other questions regarding the motion action list? Councillors? Councillor Keller-Epney?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'm just curious that we started the pilot project in S Block with residents parking their motorhomes. Have we filled that up? I'm just curious.
I don't have any information on that. Director Nadon would be the one that would have the most information. We can certainly get an update to council and email that around what the update has been like.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion. Councillor Keller-Epney, thank you.
I'll make the motion that committee approve the updated motion action list.
No question, all in favor? Hearing none opposed, motion carries. Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item 9, councillor upcoming meetings. Council appointments to boards and committees. Councillors, any meetings coming up? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Tonight we have the monthly meeting for the Jasper Yellowhead Historical Society, and that's all I have on the books for the next week.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keller-Epney.
I believe following this meeting, we have a county committee meeting today.
Mayor Island.
Seniors community conversation tomorrow afternoon at 3:30, I believe.
Yeah, and tomorrow as well, the adult community conversation. I'm not sure what time actually, but go ahead, Councillor.
And the early childhood one as well.
Okay, moving on to upcoming events. We have intergovernmental next week, 9:30, and we're hosting that. Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce General Meeting is 9 o'clock on January 17th, and that's Zoom. Oh, sorry, it's a Zoom meeting. Jasper in January, is from January 12th to 28th, so lots of events happening, amongst those weekends and during the week. NETMA is January 24th, and location is to be announced. Oldest night of the year, is February 24th, leaving from Jasper Activity Center, I think, 4 to 7. And then strategic priorities review, for council and admin is February 29th to March 1st at Pyramid Lake Lodge. Item 10.2 is an in-camera, intergovernmental, item, and, I don't forecast this coming out with any further information or, motions after, that. So thank you to the public for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for a regular council meeting. May I have a motion to go in camera. Thank you, Councillor Callahan. All in favor? So we've gone into camera at 11:05.